Over 4 decades ago, the world was introduced to a mysterious and deadly virus that would change the course of medicine, society, and millions of lives forever. Human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, was first identified in 1981 amid confusion, fear, and devastating loss. Since then, it has sparked a global health crisis, stigma, and countless battles, both in laboratories and in communities worldwide. But HIV is not just a story of tragedy. It is also one of resilience, groundbreaking science, and hope. Today, in 2025, after years of tireless research, we stand on the brink of potentially eradicating this virus for good. In this documentary, we will take you on a journey from the earliest known cases to the latest cutting-edge therapies using stem cells and gene editing. This is the full story of HIV, the virus that changed the world and the people who refused to give up. To understand the story of HIV, we must go back, not just to the 1980s, but decades earlier, deep in Central Africa. In 1959, in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, a man's blood sample was taken and stored for unrelated research. Decades later, scientists would test that sample and discover HIV. It was the earliest confirmed case of the virus in a human being. But where did it come from? HIV likely originated as SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus, in chimpanzees. Scientists believe that somewhere around the early 20th century, SIV crossed into humans, possibly through bushmeat hunting and blood exposure. The virus adapted, slowly at first, but over decades it spread quietly through Central Africa. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, HIV spread silently. By the time it reached Haiti and later the United States, it had already begun to seed a global pandemic, though no one yet knew it existed. In 1981, American doctors began seeing something alarming. Young, previously healthy gay men in New York and Los Angeles were suddenly dying of rare infections and cancers, like pneumocystis pneumonia and Kaposi's sarcoma. There was no name, no treatment, and no explanation. At first, theories ran wild. Was it drug use? A lifestyle disease? A punishment from God? The media dubbed it the gay plague, stoking fear, moral panic, and stigma. But doctors and researchers began to see the bigger picture. This was an infectious disease, and it wasn't only affecting gay men. By 1982, the disease had been named Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, or AIDS. The LGBTQ+ community bore the brunt, not just of the disease, but of rejection and cruelty. Funeral homes refused bodies. Families disowned loved ones. Politicians stayed silent. But out of that silence came resistance. Activists organized, protested, demanded government attention and research funding. AIDS became more than a disease. It became a civil rights movement. In 1983, French researchers led by Luc Montagnier isolated the virus responsible. A year later, American scientist Robert Gallo confirmed it. The virus was named HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. Now, science had a target, but the war was just beginning. By the mid-1980s, HIV had reached every continent. The world was no longer asking if this was a crisis, but how long we could survive it. With deaths rising and panic growing, scientists raced to find the source of the new disease. In 1983, a team at the Pasteur Institute in France, led by Luc Montagnier, isolated a new virus from the lymph node of a man with AIDS. A year later, American researcher Robert Gallo confirmed the finding, identifying the same virus as the cause of AIDS. The virus was named Human Immunodeficiency Virus, HIV. Now that HIV could be identified in blood, another danger emerged. The virus had been spreading through blood transfusions for years. Thousands of hemophiliacs and patients receiving blood products were infected, including children. By the time HIV screening of blood banks began in 1985, the damage was already done. By the late 1980s, HIV had reached every continent. In sub-Saharan Africa, the virus was spreading primarily through heterosexual transmission. In places like Thailand and India, sex workers and injection drug users were hit hard. By 1990, more than 8 million people were living with HIV. Despite the growing crisis, public response remained slow, especially in Western governments. U.S. President Ronald Reagan didn't publicly say the word AIDS until 1985, 4 years into the epidemic. Fear and misinformation ran rampant. People believed you could get HIV from touching a doorknob or sitting on a toilet. Patients were fired from jobs, evicted, even refused medical care. As governments dragged their feet, people took action. Activist groups like ACTUP and GMHC emerged, demanding faster drug approvals, access to treatment, and media attention. Their slogan, "Silence equals death," became a rallying cry for a generation fighting to be heard. The AIDS memorial quilt began to grow, with each panel honoring a life lost. In 1987, the first HIV treatment was approved, AZT-zidovudine. It was originally developed as a cancer drug, and though it showed promise in slowing the virus, the side effects were harsh. Patients suffered from nausea, fatigue, anemia, and it only worked for a short time. Still, for many, it was the first glimmer of hope. By the early 1990s, the death toll was staggering. In the United States alone, over 200,000 people had died of AIDS by 1993. Entire communities were being erased. especially among gay men, Black Americans, and the urban poor. Around the world, HIV had become the leading cause of death among adults aged 25 to 44. In 1991, NBA superstar Magic Johnson announced he was HIV positive. For many Americans, it was the first time they saw a healthy, heterosexual man living with HIV, and it changed public perception. That same year, Freddie Mercury, lead singer of Queen, died from AIDS-related complications, sending shockwaves around the globe. The story of AIDS was no longer hidden. It was now in the mainstream. By 1995, the world had identified the virus, mourned millions, and demanded action. But a new chapter was about to begin, one that would finally turn the tide. In 1995, something remarkable happened. Scientists began combining multiple antiretroviral drugs, attacking the virus at different stages of its life cycle. This new approach was called highly active antiretroviral therapy, or HAART. It didn't cure HIV, but it changed everything. For the first time, death rates from AIDS began to decline. People who were once told they had months to live were now living years, even decades. The virus was no longer a death sentence. Antiretroviral therapy, or ART, doesn't remove HIV from the body. Instead, it blocks the virus from replicating, lowering it to undetectable levels. And with consistent treatment, people living with HIV can live long, healthy lives and cannot transmit the virus to others. But access to these life-saving drugs was not equal. In the United States and Europe, patients were gaining years of life. In sub-Saharan Africa, where the majority of HIV-positive people lived, millions were still dying. At the turn of the millennium, 6,000 people were dying from AIDS every single day. Then came a bold move. In 2003, U.S. President George W. Bush launched the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, the largest global health initiative ever dedicated to a single disease. It focused on delivering ART, training health workers, and expanding prevention programs across Africa and beyond. The impact was immediate and profound. Clinics expanded. Mothers could give birth without passing the virus to their babies. Millions who would have died lived. Since its launch, PEPFAR has saved over 25 million lives and transformed entire health systems in more than 50 countries. By the early 2000s, a new narrative emerged. HIV was no longer just a killer. With proper treatment, it became a chronic condition, like diabetes or high blood pressure, manageable, treatable, and no longer contagious if undetectable. Still serious, but no longer a death sentence. The world had finally turned a corner, but millions still lived with the virus. And for all the progress, the question remained: could HIV ever truly be cured? In 2007, a quiet medical miracle occurred. A man named Timothy Ray Brown, known only as the Berlin patient at the time, became the first person in the world to be cured of HIV. Brown had been living with HIV for over a decade when he was diagnosed with leukemia, a blood cancer. His doctors decided to treat his cancer using a bone marrow transplant, replacing his immune system with donor stem cells. But here's the twist. His donor carried a rare genetic mutation called CCR, 5-delta-32, a mutation that makes immune cells resistant to HIV. HIV enters the body's immune cells by attaching to a protein called CCR5. But in people with the CCR5-delta-32 mutation, that entry point is missing. The virus can't get in. By replacing Brown's immune system with donor cells that lacked CCR5, doctors had given him an immune system that HIV couldn't infect. For years, Brown's case was considered unique, a scientific fluke. Bone marrow transplants are risky, expensive, and dangerous. Not a practical cure for the millions living with HIV. But then, it happened again. In 2019, a second man, known as the London patient, was declared functionally cured after receiving a similar stem cell transplant. Then a third, the Düsseldorf patient, confirmed the pattern. In all three cases, cancer treatment combined with the rare CCR5 mutation had led to long-term HIV remission, with no virus returning years later. While these cases gave researchers incredible insights, they also revealed the limits of the approach. Bone marrow transplants are high risk and only used when treating deadly cancers. The CCR5D32 mutation is extremely rare, found in just 1% of people, mostly of Northern European descent. So, while stem cell transplants proved that a cure was possible, they weren't yet scalable. What the Berlin, London, and Düsseldorf cases did was redefine what a cure could look like. They proved HIV could be completely eliminated from the body, or at least kept in check without lifelong medication. These cases became the blueprint for the next phase of HIV research: gene therapy, genome editing, immune modulation. The scientific world had one goal in mind. If stem cells could do it once, maybe gene editing could do it for everyone. With stem cell cures proving HIV could be beaten, the scientific world set its sights on something bigger: a scalable, low-risk genetic cure for everyone. The key? A revolutionary gene editing tool called CRISPR. CRISPR is like a pair of molecular scissors. It allows scientists to precisely cut and modify DNA, even inside living cells. When it comes to HIV, researchers saw an opportunity. What if we could use CRISPR to cut HIV out of the genome altogether? In 2022, a biotech company called Excision Biotherapeutics began the first human trials of a CRISPR-based HIV therapy called EBT-101. It's designed to find and remove the hidden HIV DNA embedded in a person's cells, a major reason why the virus is so hard to cure. Early results have shown promise. The treatment is safe, well-tolerated, and in animal models, even eliminated the virus. Human trials are still in progress as of 2025, but the world is watching. Beyond CRISPR, scientists are exploring other forms of gene therapy. Editing immune cells to resist HIV infection, creating T cells that actively hunt down the virus, using viral vectors to deliver genetic vaccines directly to cells. The line between therapy and cure is blurring, and for the first time in history, the dream of eradicating HIV seems technically possible. Even as researchers chase a cure, prevention has also entered a new age. In 2022, a breakthrough long-acting injectable called lenacapavir was approved, protecting people from HIV with just 2 shots per year. Other drugs like cabotegravir are also transforming PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, especially in communities where daily pills were impractical. Prevention is becoming simpler, more discreet, and far more effective. Behind the scenes, artificial intelligence is accelerating every part of HIV science, mapping viral mutations, predicting immune responses, designing new drugs, even creating vaccine blueprints. In 2024, an AI-designed HIV vaccine candidate entered preclinical testing, built entirely from digital simulations. The 2020s have shown us what's possible. HIV can be controlled, HIV can be prevented, and yes, HIV can be cured. But turning these breakthroughs into reality for the 38 million people still living with HIV takes time, funding, and global cooperation. As of 2025, over 38 million people are still living with HIV. The virus no longer dominates headlines, but it still deeply affects lives across the globe. Most of these people live in low and middle-income countries where access to treatment remains limited and stigma is still deadly. In places like sub-Saharan Africa, many patients still travel hours just to refill medications. Clinics are underfunded. Doctors are stretched thin. Meanwhile, in high-income countries, patients can now live full lives with simple pills or 2 injections a year. But inequality isn't just about money. Stigma, the fear, shame, and silence around HIV, still prevents millions from getting tested or seeking care. In some countries, being HIV positive can mean losing your job, your family, even your life. Laws in more than 60 countries still criminalize HIV status, transmission, or homosexuality, feeding a cycle of silence and fear. Women, especially young women, continue to be disproportionately affected. In sub-Saharan Africa, 6 out of 10 new infections are among women. Gender inequality, limited education, and sexual violence all fuel their vulnerability. Solutions must be scientific, but also social, legal, and cultural. Today, HIV-positive children are growing up, going to school, falling in love, living proof of how far we've come. But they still face bullying, fear of rejection, and the challenge of lifelong medication. The next generation deserves more than survival. They deserve a cure. Those who survived the early AIDS crisis, the long-term survivors, are now aging. Many live with trauma, loneliness, and health issues from early toxic treatments. Mental health must now become part of the HIV conversation. Despite the silence, the fight isn't over. Organizations, researchers, healthcare workers, and activists are still pushing forward, building systems not just to treat HIV, but to end it. The tools are here. The question is, will the world finish what it started? More than 40 years ago, HIV emerged as a global nightmare. It took millions of lives, divided nations, and exposed our deepest inequalities. But it also revealed something else: the courage of a community, the power of science, the resilience of the human spirit. We now know HIV can be cured. We've seen it in just a few, through stem cells and rare genetic pathways. And every year, we move closer to making that cure real, affordable, and available to all. We've built tools to control the virus, to prevent it, even to erase it. What once felt impossible is now just a matter of time. We've built tools to control the virus, to prevent it, even to erase it. What once felt impossible is now just a matter of time. But science alone won't finish the fight. We must end stigma. We must demand equity. and we must never again turn away from the people who need us most. This is the story of HIV, not just a virus, but a journey from fear to knowledge, from death to hope, and now, finally, from survival to a cure.